A wedding is a sacred moment, a celebration of two souls coming together, pledging to share their lives forever. But not every wedding story ends in eternal bliss. Behind the veil of elegance, fresh bouquets, and cheerful laughter, there are sometimes secrets hidden from plain sight, secrets that can unravel the very foundation of love. Leah, a beautiful and vivacious young woman, believed she had found her happily ever after with Derek, the man she trusted to stand by her side for the rest of her life. Their love seemed like a fairy tale, and the wedding was the perfect culmination, a day of joy and celebration, where family and friends gathered to witness their union. Yet, beneath Derek's charming smile lay a shadowy truth, something he desperately tried to keep hidden. At the reception, the air buzzed with happiness. Leah glowed in her stunning wedding dress. Derek looked dashing in his tailored suit, and Taryn, Derek's close friend, was there to toast the newlyweds. But there was something peculiar in Taryn's gaze, something that hinted at an unspoken tension. In every story, the heart lies in its characters, their dreams, flaws, and the secrets they carry. This tale is no different. As we dive into the lives of Leah, Derek, and Taryn, each character adds a piece to the intricate puzzle, one that will ultimately reveal a shocking truth. Leah, the radiant bride, is the epitome of grace and resilience. Born and raised in a small town, Leah's upbringing taught her the value of love, loyalty, and trust. She was the type of person who could light up a room with her laughter, her kindness touching the lives of everyone she met. Despite her cheerful demeanor, Leah carried her own struggles, a lingering fear of abandonment after her parents' sudden divorce during her teenage years. This fear made her cherish the idea of a stable, lifelong partnership, which she believed she had found in Derek. To Leah, Derek wasn't just her partner. He was her anchor, her safe harbor in a world of uncertainties. Derek, the charismatic groom, seemed like the perfect match for Leah. With his magnetic charm, sharp wit, and ambition, he quickly won her heart. Derek worked as a financial consultant in the city, a career that gave him the confidence and poise that people admired. He had a way of making everyone feel at ease, masking any stress or tension behind an easy smile. But Derek's polished exterior hid a more complex side, a man haunted by past decisions and unresolved guilt. Beneath his confident facade, there were cracks, ones he hoped Leah would never notice. Taryn, Derek's best man and longtime friend, played an important yet enigmatic role in their lives. The three had met years ago, and Taryn's easygoing personality made him a natural fit in Leah and Derek's circle. Taryn, however, was much more than a bystander in their love story. His bond with Derek went back to their college years, where they shared a history filled with youthful mischief, success, and secrets that were never meant to surface. Taryn's loyalty to Derek was unshakable, but it came with a burden, a truth he kept hidden for years, knowing its revelation could shatter everything. As the wedding festivities unfolded, the dynamics among these three characters began to show subtle shifts. Leah, basking in the joy of her big day, noticed fleeting moments of discomfort between Derek and Taryn, an awkward glance here, a hesitant smile there. It was unlike the camaraderie she had always admired between the two men. She brushed it off as nerves or exhaustion, unaware that the seeds of doubt were being sown. Derek, on the other hand, found himself grappling with the weight of his choices. While he had everything he could ever want, success, love, and a bright future, there was something he couldn't ignore. Every time he looked at Leah, he felt both overwhelming love and crippling guilt. Taryn's presence only amplified these emotions, a silent reminder of the secret they shared. Taryn's perspective was equally fraught. Watching his closest friend marry the woman he adored was bittersweet. Taryn knew the truth that could ruin Derek's perfect image in Leah's eyes, but he also knew the cost of revealing it. He struggled with his conscience, torn between protecting Derek's secret and giving Leah the honesty she deserved. Together, Leah, Derek, and Taryn form a triangle of love, trust, and deception. As their story unfolds, the perfect wedding day begins to unravel, revealing layers of complexity that none of them were fully prepared to confront. The question isn't just about what will happen when the truth comes out, but whether their relationships, marriage, friendship, and love can survive the fallout. Every story has a foundation, events, choices, and relationships that shape the present. The lives of Leah, Derek, and Taryn are no exception. Beneath the surface of a joyous wedding celebration lies a web of history and hidden truths, each thread threatening to unravel the carefully constructed narrative of love and trust. Leah's background. Leah grew up in a small, picturesque town where life seemed simple on the surface but was often complicated beneath. Her parents' marriage, initially the ideal she aspired to, fell apart when she was just 16. Her father's infidelity shattered Leah's sense of stability, leaving her to grapple with feelings of abandonment and distrust. This emotional wound shaped her views on love and commitment. Despite the scars of her past, Leah worked tirelessly to build a life of her own. She pursued a career in interior design, a field where her creativity and attention to detail could shine. Leah was well-liked among her peers, known for her empathy and ability to turn even the bleakest spaces into warm, welcoming sanctuaries. However, beneath her confident exterior, Leah feared vulnerability. She longed for a relationship that would provide the emotional security her childhood lacked, a relationship she believed she had found in Derek. Meeting Derek was a turning point for Leah. His charm and steadfast demeanor seemed to be the answer to her prayers. For the first time, she felt seen and cherished. But as much as she loved him, Leah never shook the subtle fear that life could take an unexpected turn. She had learned long ago that the people you trust most can disappoint you. And while she buried these fears deep, they lingered in the corners of her mind. Derek's background. Derek came from an entirely different world. Raised in the bustling city by parents who prioritized success above all else, Derek learned early that achievement was the key to recognition. His father, a high-powered attorney, and his mother, a prominent surgeon, had little time for emotional connections, leaving Derek to navigate much of his childhood alone. This upbringing instilled in Derek a fierce drive for success and an ability to compartmentalize his emotions. He excelled academically, securing a lucrative career in financial consulting. But while Derek's professional life thrived, his personal life was less stable. His relationships were often transactional, based more on convenience than genuine connection. That is, until he met Leah. Leah's warmth and authenticity were unlike anything Derek had experienced. She softened his edges, and for the first time, Derek felt he could let his guard down. Yet, even as he embraced their relationship, Derek carried the weight of past mistakes he hoped would never catch up with him. Taryn's background. Taryn's life was a tapestry of contradictions. He grew up in a modest household, his parents instilling values of loyalty and honesty. But as he entered adulthood, Taryn discovered that life was rarely as straightforward as the values he had been taught. He met Derek during their college years, and the two became fast friends, bonding over late-night study sessions, mutual ambitions, and the occasional reckless escapade. Derek's confidence and determination complemented Taryn's more laid-back demeanor, and their friendship thrived. Taryn's role in Derek's life deepened when he inadvertently became entangled in one of Derek's secrets, a decision made during a wild night in college that neither of them fully understood at the time. This secret, a seemingly minor incident in their youth, took on greater significance as the years passed. While Derek moved on, focusing on his career and relationship with Leah, Taryn couldn't shake the feeling that the past would resurface. Taryn's feelings for Leah complicated matters further. He admired her from the moment they met, but as Derek's best friend, he knew she was off-limits. Still, Taryn couldn't ignore the growing sense of guilt as he watched Leah devote herself to a man who wasn't entirely honest with her. The shared secret. The core of their tangled history lies in a single event during their college years, a night of poor judgment and impulsive decisions. Derek and Taryn attended a party where lines were crossed, and consequences were ignored. While the details of that night were buried in their shared past, the repercussions loomed over Derek's future. Unbeknownst to Leah, that night had resulted in a secret that Derek had worked tirelessly to keep hidden. Taryn, caught in the crossfire, became the reluctant guardian of Derek's truth. He struggled with the moral dilemma of protecting his friend versus giving Leah the honesty she deserved. The secrets began to surface. As the wedding approached, the weight of their shared history grew heavier. For Derek, The pressure of maintaining his perfect image while suppressing his guilt became increasingly unbearable. He found himself second-guessing his choices and questioning whether he could build a marriage on a foundation of half-truths. Taryn, too, felt the strain. Watching Leah pledge her life to Derek was a constant reminder of the betrayal he was complicit in. He wondered whether silence was truly the best course of action, or whether the truth, painful as it might be, could ultimately set them all free. Leah, oblivious to the storm brewing around her, focused on creating the perfect wedding. But she couldn't ignore the subtle shifts in Derek's behavior or the tension in Taryn's presence. Her intuition told her something was amiss, but she couldn't yet piece together what. The cracks began to show. On the surface, the wedding day was flawless. The venue, a stunning vineyard, was adorned with delicate florals, twinkling lights, and an air of celebration. Yet beneath the veneer of perfection, emotions ran high. Derek's unease, Taryn's inner turmoil, and Leah's growing suspicions created an undercurrent of tension that no amount of champagne could mask. As the day unfolded, moments of discomfort began to accumulate. Derek hesitated during his vows, his voice faltering as he promised Leah a lifetime of honesty and devotion. Taryn avoided direct eye contact with Leah, his guilt manifesting in awkward silences. Leah, ever perceptive, began to question the subtle shifts in her surroundings. The truth, long buried, was clawing its way to the surface, and as the sun set over the vineyard, it became clear that the secrets binding Derek, Leah, and Taryn together could no longer remain hidden. As the wedding day approached, the air grew thick with anticipation, and not the joyful kind. Beneath the surface of excitement and celebration, a web of unspoken fears, hidden truths, and unresolved emotions tightened around Leah, Derek, and Taryn. What should have been the happiest time of their lives instead became a storm of conflicting feelings and subtle signs that something wasn't quite right. Leah's quiet observations. Leah had always been intuitive. While she was thrilled about the upcoming wedding, she couldn't shake the feeling that Derek had been distant lately. He seemed preoccupied, his mind wandering during their conversations about flowers, seating arrangements, and vows. At first, Leah chalked it up to wedding stress. After all, planning such a grand event was no small feat, and Derek had been juggling work on top of everything else. But as the days turned into weeks, his distracted behavior became harder to ignore. He was spending longer hours at the office, and when he was home, he seemed withdrawn. Leah's best friend, Emma, had tried to reassure her. "It's normal," Emma said over coffee one morning. "Guys get weird before weddings. It's just nerves." But Leah wasn't so sure. Derek wasn't just nervous, he was avoiding something. The most troubling sign came during their engagement photo shoot. Derek had always been good at hiding his emotions, but that day, he seemed unusually tense. His smile didn't reach his eyes, and he flinched when Leah touched his arm. When she asked if everything was okay, he forced a laugh and muttered something about work stress. But Leah couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the story. Derek's growing guilt. For Derek, every day leading up to the wedding felt like walking a tightrope. He loved Leah, of that, he was certain, but the weight of his past mistakes pressed down on him, threatening to crack the perfect image he had worked so hard to build. The secret he shared with Taryn was a ghost that refused to rest. At first, Derek had convinced himself it didn't matter. The incident had been years ago, a stupid decision made during a reckless phase of his life. It wasn't who he was anymore, but the closer the wedding day came, the harder it was to push those thoughts away. Every time Leah looked at him with those trusting eyes, Derek felt like a fraud. She believed in him, in the life they were building together, and while he wanted to give her the happiness she deserved, he couldn't escape the fear that his secret would destroy everything if it ever came to light. Derek found himself withdrawing from Leah, avoiding conversations about the future. He buried himself in work, telling himself it was temporary, that once the wedding was over, things would return to normal. But deep down, he knew better. The cracks in their relationship were already starting to show, and he had no idea how to fix them. Taryn's inner turmoil. Taryn had always been the easygoing one, the friend everyone could count on for a laugh or a shoulder to lean on. But in the weeks leading up to Derek and Leah's wedding, he felt anything but calm. The secret he shared with Derek weighed heavily on him. It wasn't just the guilt of keeping it from Leah. It was the knowledge that his silence made him complicit in Derek's deception. Taryn had always prided himself on his honesty. But this situation was testing his integrity in ways he never anticipated. Taryn's feelings for Leah only added to his turmoil. He had tried to suppress them, reminding himself that she was Derek's fiancée, not his. But as the wedding drew closer, it became harder to ignore the ache in his chest every time he saw her smile. He hated himself for it, for wanting someone he couldn't have, for envying his best friend's happiness. Taryn found himself avoiding both Leah and Derek whenever possible. He made excuses to skip pre-wedding events, claiming work obligations or last-minute errands. But in reality, he was running from his own emotions, afraid of what might happen if he let them surface. Moments of suspicion. The tension between the three of them didn't go unnoticed. At a family dinner 2 weeks before the wedding, Leah's mother, Diane, pulled her aside. "Is everything okay with Derek?" she asked gently. "He seems off." Leah brushed it off, not wanting to worry her mother. "He's just stressed," she said with a smile. "It's a lot of pressure, planning all of this." But Diane's words lingered in her mind, adding to the doubts she was already struggling to suppress. Meanwhile, Taryn's behavior was also raising eyebrows. Emma, ever perceptive, confronted him after one particularly awkward encounter. "What's going on with you?" she demanded. "You've been acting weird ever since the engagement party." Taryn shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "It's nothing, just work stuff." But Emma wasn't convinced. She could see the guilt in his eyes, even if she didn't know the cause. The calm before the storm. The night before the wedding, the tension reached its peak. Leah and Derek had agreed to spend the evening apart, following the tradition of not seeing each other before the ceremony. But while Leah was surrounded by her bridesmaids, laughing and sipping champagne, Derek sat alone in his apartment, consumed by anxiety. Taryn, too, was restless. He debated whether to confront Derek, to tell him it was time to come clean. But every time he picked up the phone, he hesitated. What if revealing the truth only made things worse? What if it ruined Leah's happiness? As midnight approached, the three of them lay awake in their separate spaces, each grappling with their own fears and regrets. They were bound together by love and loyalty, but also by secrets and lies. And as the first rays of dawn signaled the arrival of the big day, one thing was clear. The tension that had been building for weeks was about to reach its breaking point. The pre-wedding moments had set the stage for a collision of emotions and revelations, a storm that none of them could avoid. All that remained was to see who would emerge unscathed and who would be left picking up the pieces. The day Leah had dreamed of since she was a little girl had finally arrived. The sun rose slowly, casting a warm glow over the estate where the ceremony was to take place. The sprawling gardens were alive with color: roses, lilies, and orchids in full bloom. Twinkling lights wrapped around the trees hinted at the magic of the evening to come. But beneath the surface of this perfect scene, tension and unease brewed, threatening to unravel everything. Morning preparations. The bridal suite was a whirlwind of activity. Makeup artists, hairstylists, and bridesmaids buzzed around Leah, ensuring every detail was flawless. Leah sat quietly in front of the vanity, her white silk robe draped elegantly over her shoulders. Her reflection showed a serene bride, but inside, her heart raced with a mix of excitement and lingering doubt. Emma, Leah's maid of honor, noticed her friend's unusual quietness. "You okay, Leah?" she asked softly, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Leah forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just, it's a big day. You know?" Emma nodded, but her eyes lingered on Leah's face for a moment longer. She could tell there was more on her mind, but this wasn't the time to press. Meanwhile, across the estate, Derek sat in his room, staring at his suit laid out on the bed. The black tuxedo, polished shoes, and neatly folded pocket square were all perfect. Yet he felt completely unprepared. His best man, Taryn, was pacing the room, trying to lighten the mood. "Come on, man," Taryn said, clapping Derek on the back. "It's your wedding day. You're supposed to look happier than this." Derek managed a weak laugh. "I am happy, just a little overwhelmed. Taryn studied his friend for a moment. He knew Derek better than anyone, and the guilt was written all over his face. Derek, Taryn began cautiously. If there's something you need to say? No, Derek interrupted, shaking his head. Today is not the day for that. Taryn sighed but didn't push further. He had his own doubts and emotions to wrestle with, and confronting them now would only add to the chaos. The ceremony. As guests filled the grand outdoor venue, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. Strings of violins played softly in the background, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air. Leah stood at the end of the aisle, her arm linked with her father's. Her gown was breathtaking, a cascade of lace and satin that shimmered in the sunlight. Gasps of admiration rippled through the crowd as she appeared, but Leah barely noticed. Her eyes were locked on Derek, who waited at the altar, his expression a mixture of awe and something she couldn't quite place. As the ceremony began, the officiant spoke about love, commitment, and the journey two people take together. Leah and Derek exchanged vows, their words heartfelt and emotional. But as Derek slipped the ring onto Leah's finger, his hands trembled slightly. She noticed but didn't say anything, attributing it to nerves. Taryn stood off to the side, his stomach in knots. Every word of the ceremony felt like a dagger, a reminder of the secret he and Derek shared. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, a moment of silence hung in the air. Taryn's heart pounded, and for a brief second, he thought about speaking up, but the fear of ruining Leah's happiness kept him silent. The reception. The reception was a vision of elegance. Crystal chandeliers hung from the tinted ceiling, and tables were adorned with gold accents and floral centerpieces. Guests danced, laughed, and toasted the newlyweds, creating an atmosphere of celebration that felt almost surreal. Leah and Derek shared their first dance as husband and wife, swaying to a soft melody under a canopy of fairy lights. To anyone watching, they looked like the perfect couple, deeply in love. But as they moved together, Leah whispered, "Are you happy, Derek?" He pulled back slightly to look at her, his face carefully neutral. "Of course I am," he said, forcing a smile. But Leah saw the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, and her heart sank. A moment of truth. As the evening wore on, the weight of the day's emotions became too much for Taryn to bear. He stepped outside, needing fresh air and a moment to think. He leaned against a tree, staring out at the moonlit gardens. When Leah appeared, "Taryn," she said softly, "what are you doing out here?" He turned, startled. "Just needed a break. It's a lot, you know?" Leah nodded, stepping closer. "It is, but it's also supposed to be the happiest day of our lives." And yet, she hesitated, searching his face. "Something feels off. With Derek. With you. I can't shake the feeling that there's something you're not telling me." Taryn froze, his mind racing. This was his chance to come clean, to tell her everything. But as he looked into her eyes, he saw her vulnerability, her hope. He couldn't bring himself to shatter her world. "It's nothing, Leah," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're just overthinking. Derek loves you." Leah studied him for a long moment before nodding. "I hope you're right," she said quietly, before turning and walking back to the reception. Unspoken promises. As the night came to a close, Derek and Leah said their goodbyes to the guests, thanking them for sharing in their special day. They left the venue hand in hand, the perfect picture of a newlywed couple. But behind the smiles and the laughter, secrets still lingered, unspoken and unresolved. The wedding day had come and gone, but the challenges ahead were only beginning. Taryn watched them leave, his chest tight with regret and longing. He had chosen silence today, but he knew it wouldn't last forever. Secrets had a way of surfacing, and when they did, the consequences would be unavoidable. For Leah, Derek, and Taryn, the wedding day marked not just the beginning of a marriage, but the start of a journey fraught with love, betrayal, and the struggle to find redemption. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: their lives would never be the same. The soft glow of the moonlight spilled through the grand windows of the honeymoon suite, casting a silvery sheen over the luxurious room. The space was meticulously prepared, petals of red roses scattered across the plush white bedding, the flickering of vanilla-scented candles adding warmth to the atmosphere, and a bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket. To any observer, it was the perfect setting for a newlywed couple's first night together. But for Leah and Derek, the night was anything but perfect. A quiet start. As the door clicked shut behind them, Leah glanced around the room, taking in the scene that had been lovingly arranged by the hotel staff. Derek stood a few steps behind her, his movements hesitant, as though he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "It's beautiful," Leah murmured, turning to face him with a faint smile. "It is," Derek replied, though his voice lacked the enthusiasm she had hoped for. An awkward silence followed, broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioning. Leah felt the tension in the room like a physical presence, and it was starting to gnaw at her. "I'll change," she said, grabbing her overnight bag and retreating into the adjoining bathroom. Derek watched her go, his jaw tightening. He wanted to feel the joy that a groom should feel on his wedding night. Instead, his mind was a storm of conflicted emotions, guilt, regret, and a fear he couldn't shake. The first conversation. When Leah emerged from the bathroom, she was dressed in an elegant silk nightgown, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked radiant, but her eyes searched Derek's face for reassurance. "You okay?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Derek nodded too quickly. "Yeah, just tired, I guess. It's been a long day." Leah tilted her head, studying him. "It has. But that's not what's bothering you, is it?" Her directness caught him off guard. He opened his mouth to respond but found himself unable to form the words. The silence stretched between them, heavy and oppressive. "Derek," Leah continued, her voice soft but insistent, "if there's something you need to tell me, now is the time. I can feel it. You're holding something back, and I don't want to start our marriage with secrets." Derek's throat tightened. He knew she deserved the truth. But how could he tell her? How could he shatter the image of the perfect husband she thought she was marrying? A bursting dam. Just as Derek was about to speak, there was a knock at the door. Both of them froze, their eyes darting toward the sound. "Who could that be?" Leah asked, frowning. "I'll check," Derek said quickly, grateful for the distraction. When he opened the door, his heart sank. Standing there, looking as though he was wrestling with his own inner demons, was Taryn. "What are you doing here?" Derek hissed, stepping into the hallway and closing the door slightly behind him. "I couldn't go home," Taryn said, his voice strained. "I couldn't leave without making sure you—" "Taryn," Derek interrupted, his tone a mix of frustration and desperation. "Now's not the time." But Leah, curious and growing increasingly uneasy, had followed Derek to the door. "Taryn," she said, her voice sharp with surprise. "What's going on?" Taryn's eyes met hers, and for a moment, he looked like he might crumble under the weight of her gaze. "Leah," he began, but Derek cut him off. "Taryn was just leaving," Derek said firmly, trying to shut the door. "No," Leah said, stepping forward. "If he has something to say, I want to hear it." The room fell into an unbearable silence as the two men exchanged a look. Finally, Taryn sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Leah, I think you should sit down." The revelation. Leah's heart pounded as she took a seat on the edge of the bed, her eyes darting between Derek and Taryn. "Just tell me," she said, her voice trembling. Taryn hesitated, glancing at Derek for permission, but Derek only looked away, his face pale. Taking a deep breath, Taryn began. "Leah, there's something you don't know about Derek, about us." Leah's stomach churned. "Us?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Taryn nodded. "Derek and I, we've been close for a long time, closer than you realize. And before you and Derek got together, we were involved." Leah's mind reeled, the words hitting her like a physical blow. "Involved?" she echoed, her voice shaking. "Yes," Taryn said, his expression filled with regret. "We were in love, and I think a part of Derek still is." Her eyes shot to Derek, who stood frozen, his head bowed. "Is this true?" she demanded. Derek finally looked up, his eyes filled with anguish. "Leah, I. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I thought I could move on, that I could give you the love you deserve. But Taryn and I, our history is complicated. Leah stood, her legs trembling beneath her. Complicated, she repeated, her voice rising. You were in love with him, and you married me without telling me? I thought I could leave it behind, Derek said desperately. I wanted to build a life with you, Leah, but tonight, seeing Taryn again, it's all been too much. The aftermath. Leah felt as though the room was spinning. She turned away from them, wrapping her arms around herself as tears filled her eyes. I don't even know who you are, she whispered. Leah, Taryn said gently, stepping toward her. This isn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. She whirled around, her eyes blazing. Don't you dare try to comfort me right now. You're just as much a part of this as he is. Taryn stepped back, guilt washing over him. Derek reached for her, but she pulled away. Don't, she said sharply. I need time to think, to process whatever this is. She grabbed her coat and purse, her mind made up. I'm leaving, she said. I can't stay here tonight. Leah, wait, Derek pleaded, but she was already at the door. Turning back, she gave them one last look. You should have told me the truth before today. Both of you. And with that, she walked out, leaving Derek and Taryn standing in the wreckage of their decisions, wondering if they'd lost her forever. Uncertain futures. As Leah drove away into the night, her heart ached with betrayal and confusion. She had married a man she thought she knew, only to discover a web of secrets and lies. Back in the suite, Derek and Taryn sat in silence, the enormity of what had just happened sinking in. For Derek, the wedding night had turned into a reckoning, a moment of truth that had left his world shattered. But amidst the pain and uncertainty, one thing was clear: their actions would have consequences, and the road ahead would be anything but easy. The events of the wedding night had sent Leah, Derek, and Taryn spiraling into emotional chaos, each struggling to process the truth that had been laid bare. The following day dawned with the sun's golden rays cutting through a heavy storm of emotions, casting stark shadows on the tangled lives of the three. This was the day when choices would be made, and the consequences of those choices would unfold in the most dramatic and devastating ways. The morning after, fractured souls. Leah woke up in a small, nondescript motel room miles from the grand estate where the wedding had taken place. Her head throbbed with exhaustion, and her heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest. The previous night's revelations played on a loop in her mind: Derek's confession, Taryn's involvement, and the profound sense of betrayal that clung to her like a second skin. Her phone buzzed incessantly on the nightstand. Messages from friends and family congratulating her on the wedding were mixed with missed calls from Derek and a single message from Taryn. I'm sorry. Please let me explain. She couldn't respond. Not yet. The words, I'm sorry, felt hollow in the face of such a monumental breach of trust. Leah needed clarity, but she doubted she would find it by speaking to either of them. Derek and Taryn, a brewing storm. Back at the estate, Derek sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped tightly together. Taryn stood by the window, staring out at the sprawling gardens below. Neither man spoke for several minutes, the weight of Leah's departure hanging heavy in the air. This is a disaster, Derek finally muttered, his voice raw with regret. It didn't have to be, Taryn replied, his tone sharper than he intended. If you just told her the truth from the start. Don't, Derek snapped, standing abruptly. Don't act like you're blameless in this. You showing up last night, what did you think was going to happen? I thought you deserved a chance to tell her everything. Taryn shot back. But you froze. Derek, you always freeze when it matters most. The tension between them crackled like a live wire. Years of unresolved emotions, love, resentment, and guilt surfaced in an explosive confrontation. You don't get to judge me, Derek said, his voice rising. You're the one who walked away when things got hard. You left me, Taryn, and you moved on. Taryn countered. Or at least, you pretended to. But marrying Leah? That was a lie to her, to yourself, and to me. Their argument grew heated, voices echoing through the suite until a loud knock at the door interrupted them. The unexpected guest, Derek opened the door to find Leah's best friend, Maya, standing there with a fierce expression. "Where is she?" Maya demanded, brushing past him into the room. "Maya, I don't think," Derek began, but she cut him off. "You don't think? That much is obvious," she snapped. Her sharp gaze landed on Taryn. "And you must be the other man." "Fantastic." Taryn looked away, guilt etched into his features. "She's not here," Derek said, his tone subdued. "She left last night." Maya crossed her arms. "Good. She deserves better than this mess. But since she's not here, I'm going to say what she can't. Both of you need to get your act together. You don't get to destroy someone else's life because you're too cowardly to deal with your own feelings." Her words hit like a hammer, leaving Derek and Taryn in stunned silence. "I'll find Leah," Maya continued, heading for the door. "But if either of you has any hope of fixing this, you'd better figure out what you really want, and fast." Leah's decision. Leah spent the morning driving aimlessly, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Memories of her relationship with Derek played alongside snippets of the painful revelations from the night before. She thought about the love she had believed was real and the trust that had been shattered. Eventually, she found herself at a quiet lakeside park. The stillness of the water mirrored the calm she so desperately sought. As she sat on a bench, staring out at the horizon, Maya called her. "Where are you?" Maya asked gently. "By the lake," Leah replied, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm coming to you," Maya said. "Don't move." When Maya arrived, she hugged Leah tightly, offering a comfort that words could not. "You don't have to decide anything right now," she said. "Take your time, but whatever you choose, make sure it's what's best for you." Leah nodded, tears streaming down her face. The turning point. By evening, Leah returned to the estate, ready to face Derek and Taryn. She didn't know exactly what she would say, but she knew she couldn't leave things unresolved. When she entered the suite, both men were there, their expressions a mix of relief and trepidation. "I need answers," Leah said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "No more half-truths. No more hiding. I deserve the full story." Over the next hour, Derek and Taryn laid everything bare, their history, their feelings, and their struggles. Leah listened, her heart breaking anew with every word. When they finished, the room was heavy with silence. "I loved you, Derek," Leah said finally. "I believed in us, but I can't be in a marriage built on lies." Derek's face crumpled, but he didn't argue. He knew she was right. "And you," Leah said, turning to Taryn. "I don't even know you, but you've caused so much pain." Taryn nodded, his head bowed. "I'm sorry, Leah, truly." Leah took a deep breath, her decision clear. "I'm leaving. I need to figure out who I am outside of all of this. Maybe someday I'll find it in me to forgive you both. But right now, I need to heal." The tragic farewell. As Leah walked out of the suite for the last time, Derek collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. Taryn stood by the window, watching her leave. "What now?" Derek asked, his voice hollow. Taryn didn't respond. He couldn't. The weight of what they had lost was too great. In the end, love hadn't been enough to save them from their own mistakes. And the tragedy of it all was that no one emerged unscathed. The story of Leah, Derek, and Taryn is one of love, betrayal, and painful self-discovery. It is a narrative woven with complex emotions, choices that changed the course of their lives, and lessons that, though hard-earned, held the potential to transform them. The conclusion, though heartbreaking, offers a chance for reflection and growth. As Leah walks away from the men who once meant everything to her, the events of the past few days serve as a mirror, reflecting not only their individual flaws, but also the universal struggles that we all face when it comes to love, trust, and self-worth. The end of the relationship, a new beginning? For Leah, leaving Derek and Taryn was not just the end of a marriage, but the beginning of a journey towards self-discovery. In the wake of heartbreak and confusion, she chose herself, a difficult decision, but one that ultimately allowed her to reclaim her sense of identity. Love, she realized, could not be the sole foundation of her life. While she had given herself completely to the men she thought she knew, she now understood that the most important relationship was the one she had with herself. Leah's departure wasn't a sign of weakness, as some might view it, but a sign of immense strength. She faced the reality of her situation, no matter how painful it was, and took control of her future. Often, people stay in toxic relationships out of fear of being alone or out of a sense of duty to others. Leah broke free from this cycle, recognizing that in order to grow and heal, she needed to let go of what no longer served her. For Derek and Taryn, the consequences of their actions were even more profound. Both men were forced to confront the depth of their mistakes and the impact they had on someone they claimed to love. In truth, they were as lost as Leah had been, driven by their own insecurities and unspoken desires, unable to communicate honestly with each other or with her. By the time they realized the damage they had done, it was too late. The opportunity to rebuild trust had passed. The heartbreaking truth: love without honesty. At the core of the story is a devastating truth. Love cannot exist without honesty. Leah, Derek, and Taryn's lives were built on a foundation of lies, omissions, and half-truths. The lack of transparency led to a cascade of misunderstandings and hurt, pushing them further apart when they should have been drawing closer together. Derek's failure to tell Leah the truth about his feelings for Taryn and the history they shared was a crucial turning point. Had he been honest from the beginning, Leah might have made a different choice. Instead, Derek allowed fear and uncertainty to dictate his actions, leading him down a path where the truth became a weapon instead of a tool for connection. The same can be said for Taryn, who, despite his love for Leah, failed to acknowledge the consequences of his return to her life. Both men, in their desperation to hold on to a sense of control, inadvertently sabotaged everything they held dear. The lesson here is simple: love requires honesty, even when the truth is difficult to hear. Without it, love becomes nothing more than a facade, a performance that ultimately crumbles under the weight of its own dishonesty. The importance of self-worth: knowing when to walk away. Another profound lesson from this narrative is the importance of self-worth. Leah's decision to walk away from the men who had once been the center of her world was not a sign of defeat, but an act of self-preservation. In the face of betrayal and confusion, Leah was able to recognize her own value. She realized that she deserved more than the painful, toxic relationship she had found herself in. Often, we stay in unhealthy relationships because we don't feel worthy of something better. We tell ourselves that we can't do better or that we need the validation of others to feel complete. But Leah's journey shows that self-worth is not something to be earned from others. It is something inherent, something we must nurture and protect. Walking away from a relationship that no longer serves us is a powerful way to honor ourselves and the life we deserve. For Derek and Taryn, their lack of self-awareness had led them down paths of regret and emptiness. Both men were caught in cycles of insecurity and fear, trying to hold on to something they could not truly possess. Their inability to value themselves outside of their relationship with Leah led to the downfall of everything they had built. When we do not know our own worth, we risk damaging the relationships that matter most to us. True strength lies in understanding ourselves and being able to let go when necessary, healing and moving forward. The final lesson of this story is the importance of healing and moving forward. Leah's journey was not an easy one, but it was necessary. She didn't let her heartbreak define her. Instead, she used it as a catalyst for change. In the days that followed her decision to leave, she sought the time and space needed to heal, time to reflect on her own needs, desires, and dreams. She had to reclaim the parts of herself that had been lost in the chaos of her relationship. Similarly, Derek and Taryn would need to face their own healing processes. Though they might not have found redemption in each other, they still had the potential to rebuild their lives. Healing is not a linear process. It's filled with setbacks and pain, but it is also an essential step toward personal growth. As time passed, both men might learn to embrace their imperfections and acknowledge their own faults. In the end, healing is a gift we give ourselves, allowing us to move forward with greater wisdom, strength, and clarity. The legacy of their story: reflection for the audience. The story of Leah, Derek, and Taryn is a reminder that love, while beautiful, is not without its challenges. It is fragile, complex, and sometimes it is not enough to overcome the struggles we face as individuals. But through heartbreak and loss, we also learn the most valuable lessons about ourselves. As the audience reflects on this journey, the key takeaway is to cherish honesty, to recognize our own worth, and to understand that relationships, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, are built on trust and respect. We must never lose sight of who we are in the pursuit of love. For those who find themselves in similar situations, Leah's decision to walk away can serve as a powerful example. No relationship is worth sacrificing your sense of self. We must remember that we are worthy of love that is genuine, transparent, and rooted in mutual respect. The path to healing begins with us, and while it may be difficult, it is always worth the effort. In the end, Leah, Derek, and Taryn's story is not just a tragedy. It is a cautionary tale, a call to action, and an invitation for each of us to reflect on how we approach love, honesty, and self-worth in our own lives. Through the ashes of their mistakes, they have the opportunity to rebuild, just as we all can, stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the values that truly matter.